I'm Dr. Nancy Moonstarr. I'm the host of A Man's Guide to Intimacy Series 3, Bold Love with Passion, and you get a treat. We are listening now to a love coach who customizes her treatment and her encouragement to couples to become best friends and work through conflict and use conflict to catalyze even a better sex life and use that to transform yourselves. We welcome Veronica Monet.
Oh, so glad to be here. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Well, I know that you do a lot with shame, and in fact, you have a shame-free zone. Would
I
you?
am the shame-free zone. It's actually pretty amazing. I've lived a lot of lives in just one, and I also believe in past lives, but that's another topic. In this lifetime, I have lived a lot of lives, and my clients feel very comfortable sharing their secrets with me. They tell me things they've never told another living soul on this planet, and I take that very seriously. It's very sacred to me. Now I know, that may be something that some other coaches and therapists might also be able to claim, but I know that they oftentimes have a therapist and then they come specifically to me to tell me the stuff they don't want to tell their therapist. So that's a role that I play for a lot of my clients. And one of the things that I'm able to do is because I've either done it, had it done to me, or I've worked with and known somebody who's done it. So it's just not new information. I don't get shocked. I don't get rocked. I don't go, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. You're great. With a high pitched voice where you're trying to pretend that it's okay. I'm just kind of like, uh-huh.
So,
So
so if I may, I was going to ask you now, tell us a little bit about what a man needs to know about a woman's shame, bringing her into the sexual arena. Oh, that much, huh?
yeah,
Start helping
that's a deep topic. So I think one of the things that there's several things. So let's start with the basic. It's kind of at the beginning. A lot of men don't get how women from a very, very early age are sexual targets. So and what they're often taught by the culture and school teachers and coaches and the media, and most assuredly parents and ministers, is to protect themselves from sexual predation. So, and that starts really early. I mean, you would not believe how early, maybe like before grade school, but certainly in grade school. A lot of focus on don't be out after dark, don't be alone, pick and choose your friends carefully, and danger, danger. Men and boys are dangerous. So that right away starts energetic presence in the body for a lot of women that I like to say is kind of like being a prey animal. So if you've ever seen like how deer are very, very observant, they're looking around all the time, their little ears are twitching, and one false move, one noise, and boom, they're off. So when I'm working with my male clients, a lot of times I try to tell them, just remember, you're dealing with a prey animal. So you need to be cautious and compassionate and careful around that. And it's not your fault. It doesn't make you a bad person. It just means that this human being, because of the body they inhabit, has experienced a lot of fear. The second thing that's really, really important is a trauma/shame burden that comes down through the ages. So this is actually in our DNA. If you study epigenetics, which is a very respected field of science, trauma is transmitted as much as 7 generations. So if you go back and any of your ancestors were part of the witch burnings, or in some way, let's just go back to the suffragettes who were force-fed while they were in prison. Women have been, raped in times of war. That stuff gets in the DNA. And so there's a lot of tamping down of sexuality. It's difficult for women to reach, access their pleasure because of that ancestral burden. Those are the two biggest ones that I think is really important. And the third one is kind of a modern problem, is cropped up in the last, I'm going to say 20, 30 years. And we can thank mainstream porn for this. Now, just as a disclaimer, I have been in alternative porn. I have produced alternative porn. I like to think it was feminist. I'm not sure what, most viewers would say about it, but it wasn't mainstream. Vast majority of mainstream porn is coming very much from a male perspective. And I hesitate to even say that it's male perspective. I think it puts a lot of pressure on men. I think it's unfair to men as well. But let's just focus on what it does to women, because it's gone mainstream. A lot of women have watched it on their own, maybe even masturbated to it on their own, certainly shared that experience with a boyfriend or a husband. And there is, unfortunately, then a lot of focus on trying to be kind of performative during sex. So instead of really going into the experience, trying to measure up to, compete with, be like a porn star. And porn stars will tell you there is nothing realistic about a porno. Okay, it has nothing to do with the actual mechanics of female sexual pleasure. So there you go, the top three. Top three. This is a prey animal who has been in the object of a lot of predation. Even if they've never been assaulted, they certainly have been accosted or harassed or chased in some way. Two, they are going to have a shame and trauma burden from their ancestors. Very much of it, women who were sexual over the millennia have been killed, frankly. And then the third is leaving her own pleasure in the dust while she tries to impress you with how sexy she is or how she measures up to a porn star. There you go.
Well, that's fabulous. Now that's a mouthful. Okay.
I know. There's more, but I thought I'd stop there.
Okay. So unless you want to go, just kind of go with your gut now, go for it. Tell me what else you want men to know.
Well, this would actually be something I would want men and women to know, and that is how magnificent female sexual response can be if you understand it. So it's kind of a slow burn. And look, I was that girl who could just do it hard and fast and get off in 20 seconds. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. What I am saying is that it doesn't access the level of pleasure that the female body is capable of. So if you can stop thinking about friction and start thinking about energy, and if you can stop focusing on is she wet, that's like a bare minimum. I mean, really, the human vulva will lubricate to prevent a painful rape. That's no measure of arousal. What you want, and I like to say, think about monkey sex. You ever seen how chimpanzees and bonobos have these really swollen vulvas when they're in heat? Think about that. Now, obviously,
I'm curious.
Human vulva is not going to swell to that extent, but we are related. So if you really know what you're doing, the whole exterior vulva is going to get puffy. That should be what you look for before you ever attempt penetration.
Mm.
And there's ways to get there.
Okay. All right. So this slow burn and think about energy instead of friction. And talk to us a little bit about the points you were making, and not just porn, but mainstream movies and media really portray this thrusting penis and the vagina and, imaging given to men and of course, women as well. Talk to us a little bit about that and what the media does to a man, to a woman about sex.
Well, I don't think it's just the media. I think it's also our own naivete. We don't understand how our parts work. So, and our culture is so oriented towards quick, fast, now, right? So we want to know, where's the buttons that make this thing work? And I always try to get my clients to move away from thinking of themselves as a microwave or a toaster oven. You're not. And your parts don't work just by pushing the right buttons. So yes, you might be able to, elicit an ejaculation or an orgasm, but if you really, really want to take your sex to a place that's going to blow your mind and really feel that craving that's inside of you, we all have it. This deep craving for something that hits all of the cylinders. Okay, I did use a mechanical reference there, but you get the point. So in that case, what you want to do is you want to slow down. And I'm not just talking about, okay, spend 20 minutes on foreplay before you do it, right? No, don't even think about it as doing it. And some of the common parlance that we have, like slapping that, or I'm like, no. Okay, I mean, granted, slapping can be, if you're slapping somebody's ass, that can be a lot of fun. But the whole idea of pumping, you are really bypassing a lot of potential for pleasure there. So, okay, I love something that my partner introduced to me. And it was a new concept for me in the way of the verbiage. Like, I never thought about this. Should be thinking about a conversation between your genitals. So if you're thinking about a conversation between the penis and the vagina, and if we're talking to heterosexual men today, I'm assuming that we may be talking about some P&V. You want to be actually tuning into your penis in a really sensitive, energetic way. You don't want to use it like it's a tool or a sword. You want to be starting to think about your penis as a very sensitive, emotional part of yourself, because it is. Once you get to know it, I mean, really get to know it. I'm not talking about just taking things into hand like you have been since you were a teenager or maybe prepubescent. I'm talking about, and here's a great exercise, by the way. Take your dominant hand, cup your genitals, preferably while you're laying down. Close your eyes and breathe. Set a timer for 5 to 10 minutes. You will be surprised how difficult it is to do those 5 to 10 minutes the first few times you do it, because there's going to be a lot of feelings and emotions that come up. And that's when you start having a conversation with your penis. Is that helpful?
That is very helpful. I like that. And that sounds like a precursor and an encouragement for edging and allowing a man to learn about slow burn for himself and building and not necessarily having to release. And so our society is really big on he's building, he's got to release, and yet with edging, it's really more of a building and stopping the release or not having to have the release and then building again and again. So talk to us a little bit about that and what maybe you know about it or how it helps men or doesn't.
Well, one of the things I'm trying to do is help men get away from the idea of performance. So I talked about, the things that influence women's sexuality. Let's just talk a little bit about what influences male sexuality. There is also a trauma burden for men. Some people might be offended about what I'm about to say, but I actually think circumcision creates trauma. If you don't believe me, just go watch a video of a little baby being circumcised. So there's a part of trauma. There's a way in which the penis is handled roughly. And circumcision actually, aside from religious viewpoints, was considered a way to tamp down masturbation. So its intention is to create a thick exterior skin to the penis so that it isn't as responsive. And one of the things we do when we take the foreskin away is we also lose the lubrication. There's a natural lubrication to an intact penis, which interacts really beautifully with a vulva and creates that sensuous conversation. Now, don't lose hope. There's a lot of men in America that have been circumcised, and that doesn't mean that your penis can't be as sensitive as you want it to be. It's just you've got to reorient your connection with it. This whole thing about rubbing one out and choking the chicken. These are such crass terms. And we also have another term we use in our culture, dickhead. And I'm kind of like, so there's a way in which we're very disrespectful towards the penis. We can see it as a source of humor. We can see it as a source of violation. We can see it as a source of power. But very rarely do we connect with it as a sensitive, emotional, beautiful portal to intimacy and pleasure. So if you really want to accentuate your pleasure, you got to stop thinking about being in a performance mode. So, okay, the other trauma burden that most men have is that every aspect of their life is about performance. Do you make enough money? What do you drive? Where do you live? What do you do? It's just always, what do you do? And when men relate to their sexuality, a lot of times they're thinking about, did I last long enough? Did I make her come? I can't tell you how many men have told me they wish they could have an orgasm as beautiful as their female partner. And you can. In fact, you can be multiply orgasmic. You can have orgasms that have nothing to do with ejaculation. But you have got to get out of the idea that you are here to please another person. This is the irony of this, okay? When you are focused on performing and pleasing, you don't get to go into this intimate place where you learn embodied touch. And let me just explain what embodied touch is. Embodied touch is me learning that if I breathe into my touch, if I really breathe into it, that means I got to slow things down, feel what's in my heart. There's a way in which I can connect with my lover where my pleasure becomes their pleasure. Okay. But if I'm poking things and trying to make them work, or I'm grabbing things to try to take, then of course, some of that will possibly wind up feeling like an assault. And a lot of it's going to feel mechanical and performance oriented. So yes, there are techniques for extending your erection so that you don't have to have an orgasm. There are techniques to become multiply orgasmic. I'm not opposed to learning those, but I really want to reframe the conversation here so we start talking about men's genitalia and men's sexual response in a sensitive, soulful, beautiful, connected way. And I think that's where men oftentimes get cheated and don't even understand how beautiful their own sexual response is, how expansive and mind-blowing their orgasms can be.
Oh, I'm just in love with the way you're presenting this and encouraging men to move into such appreciation for their own body and their own response and getting connected. This whole idea of the breathing, where's your heart as you're connected, as you're touching your partner, and what other things do men maybe bring to you that have blocked them or would be helpful for our listeners or participants to know about, because certainly they will run into these.
Well, here's one of the things that I've been exploring and learning about from the men that I'm interviewing from my book, my second book, Love, Lust, and Romance and Awaken Me Too. I'm finding out that a lot of men, because of their male role training, which starts at such an early age, like about the age of 3, you know what gender you have been ascribed. And you start kind of falling into line about what that gender is supposed to do or not supposed to do. So for anybody who is raised as a male, there is a huge pressure to not have emotions other than being angry or being horny. You get to do those 2 things. So all these other human emotions, the sensitivity, the grief, the sadness, the sentimentality, the joy, even the joy. Think about that for a minute. Joy is not considered masculine. It's such a ripoff. such a ripoff. So even to be happy about having had sex with somebody, you have to reframe it if you're in the masculine role as you conquered them, or I tapped that, right? All this tough guy stuff, but not really feeling like, yeah, it was magical, it was beautiful. I felt my heart expand.
You're right. They use the word score. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. And what that does, we complain so much about men objectifying women. I am much more concerned about the ways men objectify themselves.
Mm.
So I would say, start thinking about yourself in a way that's human. Start connecting with all of your different feelings. So what ends up happening, and the men that I'm interviewing are talking about why they might have pushed a sexual encounter past the point of consent. Not really talking about rape or sexual assault here. I'm talking about what is kind of falling into the Me Too category. Like, let's say Aziz Ansari's bad date, right? That really made the news a couple of years ago. He's a comedian, if you haven't heard of him.
And refresh us.
Yeah, and so a young photographer / journalist had a date with him, went to his apartment, and he just, she'd say no, and he'd stop, but then he'd keep kind of pushing, and she felt nagged and cornered. And as it turns out, she left, but not before she did some things she didn't want to do. And some people are labeling this as just a bad date. I think it's just indicative of the male and female role training. So she's supposed to be nice and he's supposed to pursue. She's supposed to say no and he's supposed to keep trying to get it. And that dynamic is fed by the scripts that were handed. But also, I just want to tease out of that scenario the training. The fact that men don't have access to all their emotions, there can be a huge craving to be able to experience one's emotions by accessing a female body. And this is what I'm hearing from men. I didn't make this up. This isn't me observing this. This is what men are telling me, that when there is union with a female body, some men, maybe a lot of men, I don't know yet, still exploring that, feel like they're more human, more connected to themselves and to life. So if that's the only time that you feel that, the only time you get to be sensitive, and I can tell you from my own personal experience, I have seen on the other side of sexual intercourse and an orgasm that men can collapse into tears, access their emotions a lot more readily. And it makes total sense. They've got a lot of hormones coursing through their system that give them access. So my recommendation, to make sure that you're not pushing and trying to get things that aren't wanted to be given, is to explore ways that you can connect with yourself on a deep emotional level without a woman. I mean, I think it's beautiful that men and women are able to support each other emotionally, but I am so eager for men to have an emotional life of their own. One where they, wouldn't it be nice? We've done surveys recently where we found out a man's best friend is almost always a woman, and a woman's best friend is almost always a woman. And that's a source of grief for me. I want to live in a world where we have best friends that are men, that men have best friends that are men, that there is this expansive access to emotional depth for all genders.
I like that. That's so nice. So I'm going to go back to a point. There's so many that are helpful and I so appreciate all the points you're covering for men. So this harkens to the idea of the aftermath regret. Again, maybe it's not forced sex, but it's sort of the morning after regret. She might feel she went too far. She wasn't quite ready. She didn't do all the no's or put everything in place, because we can talk about that. talk a little bit about that phenomena and him being in touch with it. And also, when it does happen, how does he handle it most constructively,
Okay.
healthily?
Great question. Thank you for that. And feel free, by the way, to go back to anything I said. I have this way of going bigger and bigger with my concepts. So first and foremost, if you're thinking about this as a prey animal, and by the way, I don't mean any insult to women. I'm a cisgender female. I think we're all animals, but scientifically it's true. But okay, all I mean by that is that this is a human being who has been accosted with unwanted sexual attention. You could just take that for granted, okay? It's happened to every woman alive and a lot of little girls, unfortunately. So, okay, if that's where that person's coming from, there are coping mechanisms that happen to that organism. I'm sorry, I use all these scientific terms, but it's fight, flight, or freeze. Almost no female-bodied human being is going to fight. Now, there are definitely exceptions to that, but I took self-defense and I froze when I got raped. Why? Because my assailant was 3 times as big as me. That is common sense, but it's also something that happens in a part of the brain we do not have control over. So a lot of women experience tonic immobility, which means they can't talk and they can't move. And it's just because they're frightened. And you may not have done anything to frighten them. They might have been triggered into an old rape or a molestation event or a Me Too moment or just this genetic legacy that we all have of, you know, basically don't fight back because you're going to get hurt. If your partner stops moving and talking, you need to stop. and you don't go with, I'm sorry, what?
I want to slow it way down and
Yeah.
say the phrase again, tonic immobility, and define it again, and just
Okay.
relight just again, so because
Absolutely.
this is big.
Thank you. It is big. Thank you. Tonic immobility is a very special phrase response. It affects probably 97% of women who have experienced rape. So when we ask a woman if she said no, we're not following the biology here. If we ask a woman if she fought back, we're not following the science. The science is that this primordial part of the brain, which is called the amygdala, some of us refer to it as the reptilian brain, has a life-saving strategy when a woman's body is in a vulnerable situation, particularly with somebody who's a little bit bigger and stronger than her. But I think also just somebody who happens to have a male body could evoke this, regardless of size and strength. And that's evolution. You're not going to get past that this generation. So just being aware of it. And look, that response could also accrue to people in male bodies. There are instances of women raping men. We can go into that if you want today. But while we're just focusing on the idea of consent and a male-bodied person being sensitive to what's happening with their partner, so you don't have that regretful morning after, you want to make sure that if your partner isn't moving or talking, you stop. And you can ask them how they're feeling, but if a response isn't forthcoming, wait, be patient, breathe, do something else. Maybe ask them, would you like to just cuddle right now? You know, we could just cuddle and breathe together. Or would you like to take a break? I could go get us a beverage. We could listen to some music. Let's slow down. If that person, if you know them very well, like if it's your partner, then this is a great opportunity to have a conversation. You can say, honey, it kind of looks like you might be having some feelings come up right now. I really want to make space for those. when you're ready, if you're ready, I'm here. We can talk about it. If not, we can just stop this and do something else. We can just take a little break. What would feel good to you right now? And what we're really trying to do is gently bring them back, because one of the things you need to know about tonic immobility, that person's gone. They're not there. So I want to gently bring them back.
Okay, this is very helpful. So what if a man is saying and presenting that he and his partner, he and his wife, they haven't had sex for a long time, and he's finally bringing her in and they're starting to get affectionate, and he's entering into this type of connection, and he runs into these stoppages. Can you give a little bit more on that? Pick it up at that point, or even go back to the point where he hasn't had sex, he's afraid to even start it, and he doesn't know what to do.
So this is a long-term partnership.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And they've had sex before, but they haven't had sex for a while?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'd really want to find out how my partner feels about our sex life. That'd be the first thing. I'd say, hey, I'd like for us to have a conversation about our sex. And I'm wanting to know, first of all, are you available for that conversation? And two, when might that be a good time? Is now a good time, or could we schedule it for next week at 6 o'clock? So I always tell my couples, make an appointment. Don't just spring things on people. Like you're sitting there watching the movies and you go, hey, we haven't had sex for a long time. Or, honey, can you talk right now? Great. Okay. So what I wanted to tell you was, and this is self-preservation. You're not going to get the experience that you want if your partner's not emotionally available. So give them an opportunity to say yes. Most people that you're in a relationship with are going to say yes. They might want to schedule it out or something. But when they buy in, when they say yes, they will be more present and the conversation will go better. So start with curiosity. When you get to that conversation, you're going to start with curiosity. You're going to ask questions, maybe even take notes, really show an interest. Oh, I hear it. I hear you haven't been missing it. Or I hear you're just so tired since our second child. Or, yeah, I get it. Vaginal atrophy since menopause. These are serious things. Can you tell me more? What else is going on for you? Oh, I didn't know you didn't like it when I did that. Wow, that's interesting. You have to be in this place of curiosity where you suspend your own reactive brain, your own tendency to want to defend or blame, and just find out who you're dealing with and how they truly feel. And after you have spent that emotional labor to show up and really be attentive to what she thinks and feels, you can ask her, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate getting to know what's true for you. Do you have curiosity to hear how it is for me? And wait for her answer. She's probably going to say yes, even if she would rather not, because now you've been so generous. That's okay. There can be a little bit of resistance and fear there. As long as nobody's being strong-armed or forced into the conversation, it probably will still go fairly well. And if she says yes, or I would like to say when she says yes, I'm here to hear you. Do I feel statements? In my movie, I love that word, in my movie. So just think about, we all are seeing life from a particular perspective. And none of us see it from exactly the same perspective. This is what makes partnerships so great. We don't want a carbon copy of ourselves. We want somebody who has some different inputs. It's what makes our life rich. So try to remind yourself of that. I like to say cultivate curiosity instead of fear. And speak from I feel. I feel in my movie, this is how it was. From my perspective, this is what I'm experiencing. Nice. And if your partner, unlike you, starts to get defensive or say, but, or well, that's not what happened, you take a breath, and say, would it be possible for you to just witness and be present for my feelings and my perceptions? You don't have to agree with them. I'm not asking you to, and nor am I trying to say that my perception is the fact, but I really need to be heard. I really need for you to hear me. Okay.
No.
So, yeah.
So how often do men run into her stoppages, and maybe even a milder version of the tonic or the silencing, but there's still some piece of that? How often do men run into that with lovemaking with their partner?
The thing that I am aware of happening most often in long-term relationships is that she is kind of doing checking that box. I'm hearing this so much from men who've been in long-term relationships. Oh, she's okay. Well, I did that now. I had sex with my husband or my boyfriend this week, so thank God I don't have to do it again. And I really want to strongly recommend that if you've got that feeling that your partner is just trying to please you or show up because they think they should, this would be a good time to decline that sex and have a conversation about your sexual connection. But okay, let's just say that she said yes and you are in the middle of sexual and you kind of feel her leaving. It really depends on her history. What if she's a sexual abuse survivor? And maybe she is in denial about that, doesn't know that that's what's happening, that she's getting triggered. You definitely want to find out. And it's not good form to say, hey, I noticed you kind of shutting down and leaving your body while I was touching you. I think maybe you are a sexual assault survivor. Nobody's, no, I'm not. And the only reason I just got quiet, right? And making a big deal out of it. Okay, that's going to be a typical response, denial. So when you decide that you want more, that you want a really authentic, heart-centered connection where the sex is mind-blowing, it's going to take some skill on your part to not accept less than that, which means stopping the sex when it starts to go into a performative rut, or you can feel your partner checking out. There are lots of women who just kind of endure touch that they don't want. As a matter of fact, there's so many women that do that. I'm launching a webinar just for women to help them stop enduring touch that they don't like. Being able to speak about it is hard for women because they're so trying to be polite, trying to be nice. So I would say that it's not so much tonic immobility that you're going to encounter in a long-term relationship. It's more like somebody kind of checking out on purpose because they're not actually enjoying it. They're just doing it to make you happy.
I hear you, and I hear it's very important for a man to notice when the performance is blocking her performance, or just he's sensing, he can tell she's not there, she's not really enjoying it. Maybe we've gotten into a rut, and I like that you're asking him to pay attention to himself and him to stop sex, because usually we think of men as they keep moving or move forward, and if I'm not getting an objection that's a clear no.
Right.
So now let's switch over and let's guide a man to how to best bring her into a conversation about sex, and what are the issues that you run into that men have when they want to talk to their partner. It could be a short-term, it might even be out of the gate, a new meetup. Any tips you can give to a man to have a great conversation, or at least a simple one that works?
Well, yeah, thanks for that question. It's great. And there's, you know, a little bit of difficult. I'm a relationship coach, so I'm so much about tailoring these kind of messages depending on the people that are in front of me. And I don't like to make a lot of assumptions based upon gender. There are certainly some generalizations that I've shared today that I think really do apply. In my experience, they fit the norm for a lot of people of a particular gender. But in general, if we go back to women feeling pressured to provide sex, being conscious of that, being aware of the fact that the combination of her feeling like she should and her wanting to not hurt your feelings, that's probably going to be up for her more than anything. So if she moves into a place where she's like, well, I just don't like it and I don't want to do it, if you could find a place inside of yourself that wasn't reactive to that, wasn't taking it personally, like, oh, I guess I'm really terrible in bed and she doesn't love me, but that particularly at a particular stage in life for some women, menopausal women, women who are perimenopausal, which is usually in the 40s, are kind of coming to this place where they start to realize that their sex has been performative and they have been doing it to please men. And they haven't really accessed their sexual pleasure in a way that's fulfilling for them. So some of them are kind of giving up on sex and their body's going through some changes too. But too often they'll use that as kind of the norm. Oh, well, I guess I just don't want sex anymore because, you know, I'm going through menopause. It certainly doesn't have to be that way. Menopause can actually be a rebirthing of your sex life where it's super, super juicy. But if she's been having sex that she didn't really like that much, then that's going to be a great time to finally stop doing it. And notice I said finally stop doing it. So being aware of the fact that there might have been a feeling of this isn't really working for me. I don't really like this. And I don't know how to tell you. So now I'm just too tired, or I don't have any desire, or I'm going through menopause, I'm having hot flashes, whatever. To see that this is a person who's actually kind of desperate to have boundaries. And if you can help her have boundaries, she might actually be able to tap into her sexual desire, maybe for the first time, but possibly again, depending on her circumstances.
Yes, yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Yeah. How would you do that? Well, curiosity again. Curiosity married to compassion. So if you were curious enough to say, hey, have there been things about our sexual relationship that were off-putting for you? Maybe even sometimes I touched you in a way that kind of creeped you out, made you feel uncomfortable, made your skin crawl. I don't know. I'm just asking. And I really want to know. I really want to know what it's been like for you. I got to tell you, when somebody experiences authentic, compassionate curiosity, their heart expands. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be a quick fix and all of a sudden you guys are going to have fabulous monkey sex, but it could. And if it doesn't, it's still an opportunity for you to find out what's actually going on in your relationship.
Very nice, very nice. So, talk to us a little bit more about men's conversations with women about sex, and how can they make it easier for her to talk and to be able to share what she does like, what is she might want to try, experiment, and what does he need to understand if he's bringing up this conversation? This is not a little conversation.
First and foremost, I would say get rid of your agenda and your shopping list. If you have a list of, oh, I wish you'd try this position, or I wish you'd be interested in this thing, I say just chuck it, get rid of it. I would love for you to have a much more fulfilling journey than that. That's kind of a transitory pleasure. It might be exciting once or twice. You guys are probably never going to do it again. It's kind of like a roller coaster ride. fun for about 5 seconds. I would like to take you on a ride, and it's going to get better and better and better every time you do it. And the joy is going to stay with you for days. It's going to be amazing. And that really goes back to what I started this conversation with, where we're going to start really connecting to your own genitals in a soulful, meaningful way, where you're breathing into them and finding the emotions that are embedded in them. You can bring that conversation to your partner. Find out, contact a sexologist like myself. Learn what the vestibular bulbs are. Find out what the anterior Pharynx erogenous zone is. It's a beautiful place to rebirth a vulva after menopause. If you don't know what these things are, don't feel bad. There's an awful lot of doctors that have never heard of them either. But that's what a sexologist does. We know where all of these seats of female sexual pleasure are. And there's beautiful places on the male body that are not always explored either, like what we call the P spot or the male G spot. So if your exploration could be more about, can we start to get to know our bodies on a more intuitive, visceral, emotionally connected, beautiful, expansive way? And I'll tell you another thing that is really of interest to the vast majority of women in long-term relationships. They want to learn more about Tantra. So if you invested some time and effort into learning about Tantra and brought that to your partner, where we're going to go into eye gazing and breath and aligning our heart chakras and the Yab Yum position and all of these beautiful things, I think that would be a real game changer.
Thank you. Now, I want to go back to the male G spot and the other erogenous spot you were talking. Tell us about this. Where is
Absolutely. So the male G spot is actually the prostate. And some men are kind of queasy about massaging their prostate because they may think it's means, oh my God, if I find it pleasurable, does that mean I'm gay? And I don't know if you're gay or not. That's a different topic. But if you're a man and you have a prostate, yes, it feels good. And learning about how to stimulate the prostate can be a real eye-opening experience for a lot of men. It is often the first time that a man will have an all-over body orgasm, where he collapses into tears, just like his girlfriend or wife maybe does. It's this opportunity to find out, wow, I had no idea that my male body had so much capacity for pleasure. And to access that place, I recommend a finger, hopefully your lover's finger, and hopefully with a finger cut or a latex glove on it or a vinyl glove, because fingernails can tear the rectum. We don't want to do that. You want to use a lot of lubrication, and you're only going to go up about 1.5 to 2 inches. You don't have to go that far up to reach it. And it's going to be the same movement that you make when you're contacting a woman's G-spot. It's just the come here motion. And your fingers pointing towards the anterior part of the rectum, which is the part facing the stomach. And there is 2 sets of sphincter muscles. The one we all know about, this is on the outside, but up inside, about 1.5 inches in, there's a second sphincter muscle. That one you cannot mentally control it. You can't say, oh, I'm going to relax that. So you have to breathe and relax. And I like using humor to get that muscle to relax, crack a joke, and then you just slide right in.
Wow, that's nice. Go ahead, more.
Yeah, and you don't want to, this is not about thrusting. This is about a very gentle little come here motion. If you want to perform oral sex while you're doing that, you're right down there. It's great. You can stimulate the nipples. This is a really hot scenario. And the internal orgasm causes everything to pulse. So your lover can have an experience of being incredibly intimate with you because they're inside your body. And at that moment of orgasm, they can feel the pulsing. And I think it's a beautiful experience for both people.
And so you were also saying a man's nipples are very sensitive as well.
They are very sexy. And some men, again, are scared of that. And they'll say, oh, I don't feel anything there. But all you got to do is play with a nipple for about 3 seconds to see the penis go like this.
Mm.
So there's a lot of sensation there. And if we could get past our fear of not being manly, then we can really go into some intense pleasure.
And then I want to also cover, so the spots on the female, the woman that you were mentioning, especially during menopause, that can be helpful.
Yes. Yes, the anterior pharynx erogenous zone. So if you look at a diagram of the internal anatomy of a woman, all the medical books have the anterior pharynx. The only thing is that as sexologists, we add erogenous zone because we happen to know it's an erogenous zone. Most doctors don't. They just know there's this little dip inside the vagina. So, okay, the way to find it, it's a little bit difficult to use a finger because it is farther up. And vaginal barrels vary from 4 inches to 12. So don't know how you're constructed and therefore don't know exactly where your A spot is. We call it A for short, A spot. So if you get a long, slender G-spot stimulator, and I am talking long and slender, it doesn't, I don't, they got all these fat G-spot vibrators nowadays. You want something long and slender. They're usually very cheap, like 20 bucks. You can get them on Amazon or Adam and Eve, wherever. But you're going to go way up inside and touch the tip of the cervix, and then just move directly across from the tip of the cervix to the anterior wall of the vaginal barrel. And that again is towards the stomach. So it's similar to finding the G-spot. It's just that you're going further up, touch the tip of the cervix, move towards the belly. You'll find a little bit of a dip in there. Now I want to transmit a word of caution here. This is like the inner sanctum, what I call the holy of holies in a woman's anatomy. This is where you've just touched the portal to the other side. That cervix is where life comes in from the other side. It's very sacred in there, and so you want to proceed with reverence and caution. That spot oftentimes contains a lot of intense emotions. If the woman's been sexually assaulted, she might have stored the fear there. If she had a traumatic birth, it might be in there. If she's just really pissed off at life, it's probably in there. So it's really best for her to explore this place first, because that creates optimum safety for her. And I don't turn the vibrator on, don't thrust that spot. You really want to just touch it lightly like this, just lightly. And while you're doing that, you're going to breathe and you're going to ask questions. What do you want me to know? What do you want to tell me? How are you feeling? What can I do for you? So we're really starting that conversation with the vulva now. And it's a great place. I can send you medical documentation of this, but they have found that stimulating that place can actually help postmenopausal women lubricate again. In my work with my female-bodied clients, I always ask them to go slow and ask those questions and keep a journal at their bedside so they can write things down if they want to. And gradually what that does is it starts to expand your capacity for pleasure internally. There is so much pleasure available inside for women's bodies as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for being so delicate and giving us those gentle explanations for the male body and the female body on these pleasure places, spots. Thank you. So I'm going to start wrapping us up to respect your time. and I just wanted to know if you could share where people can find you and where you'd like them to look. And then also if you have a free gift for our audience.
Absolutely. So if you just go over to the shamefreezone.com, and if you don't remember the URL, don't worry, just Google Shame Free Zone, Veronica Monet Shame Free Zone, it'll come up. And then you'll see this beautiful cover of a book called The Exquisite Partnership Formula. Click on that and hit subscribe. You will get a download for the free book, and you'll get access to 3 of my top best, most popular podcasts. And some of them cover sacred sex, sex addiction, fun, informative topics. The book is about 10,000 words long. It cost me an arm and a leg to produce it. It's full color. It's just gorgeous. And it contains some of the things that I talked about today, like Show Me Your Movie, which is actually a game I teach couples for talking about sensitive, potentially conflictual topics. Follow that format. You're going to do very well with it. There's also a 5-step process for asserting a no that brings your partner closer to you, expands their heart, creates more intimacy, and can lead to better sex. And I also give a very...
Say that again.
The Exquisite Partnership Formula.
This last one, you're...
Yeah, it's a 5-step process for asserting a no that pulls your partner closer to you, creates more intimacy, and can actually lead to hot sex.
Nice. Wow. Oh, you've been so generous.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be part of your wonderful summit.
Oh, well, it's just been a delight. Is there any parting words or just even maybe wisdom you want to just throw out for a closing?
Yeah, I really think one of my favorite sayings is cultivate curiosity instead of fear. And, we're afraid to know our partner's truth, afraid they're going to say something that hurts our feelings. We are actually afraid to get to know ourselves because a lot of us are disappointed in ourselves and don't trust ourselves. And I want to say, you are human. Fear is natural, but your bliss, your joy, that expansive expression of yourself lies on the other side of curiosity.
Very nice. Oh,
thank you, darling.
Yes, you too. You too. Okay, I'm going to close for now.
Okay. All right. Bye.